Hello, my name is Fischel, and my project name is Time to Plan the Future, a method for creating green infrastructure ahead of time.
The project deals with creating landscape resources in areas that are designated for construction of new neighborhoods and cities. I will begin with a short video that was the first generator for this project's idea.
אתה רואה אנשים עוברים, זה חריש. תראה איזה מרגש. כל היום, כל הזמן. מרגש. ובאתי לכאן, הכל היה, מה זה כיף? גני תקווה, היינו צמודים לסביון. עם מלאה עצים. עצים שממש, חופים לך את הכל. ממש אהבתי לעשות שם הליכות. פה פחות בא לי, קניתי את ההליכות.
Thanks to Liat and her family. I find it quite upsetting that while living in a new neighborhood, Liat had to buy a treadmill because she didn't enjoy walking outside. Liat's neighborhood is just one example of the way new neighborhoods are built in Israel. Let's see an example of how the process of building a new neighborhood looks like. This is an extension of the city of Harish, where Liat lives. Here, we have the so-called empty area designated for construction. We place the plan on it, the architectural concept, and we build the new neighborhood by this concept. But is that area really empty? I don't think so. There is an existing context in that empty area. That context can be very complex and filled with different layers, but one of the most important parts of it is the vegetation and especially the trees. We remove all this context, flatten the surface, and then we build our new concept instead. This process of deleting the existing context happens quite frequently, especially on agricultural lands near cities, since a big part of the Israeli urban development is happening there. Usually, it is easiest for the city to bite into agricultural lands because of bureaucratical, economical, topographical, and many other reasons. Since it's quite easy to anticipate that cities will grow into nearby agriculture areas in some point of time, I will focus mainly on these lands. My aim is to offer a system that will change the environment of these lands gradually over the years, so that in the future, these lands will be able to gracefully absorb the new neighborhoods that grow into them. I believe that the action of erasing the existing context of a place, including that of agricultural lands, leads to a situation where all new neighborhoods start with a blank page, which then leads to approximately the same flat and empty starting point to every project. An almost identical starting point would probably lead to the same results, and this is how many cities in Israel look like. Generic neighborhoods that all look alike, a desert of asphalt and concrete without any traces of the past. In contrast, this is an abstraction of iconic cities in the world. And if I use the same abstraction on the modern cities in Israel, this is how they look through my perspective. And if we will continue with this current planning method, there will be more and more cities like these. When I look at these modern cities, I think of Jan McHarg's book, and I wonder, did we forget design with nature? Or maybe all that is left of McHarg's approach is just a technological interpretation of his ideas, the GIS layers. I suggest it is time to go back to the essence of McHarg's approach, but not only to design with the existing nature, but also to create another nature for the future, a second nature. So what is first and second nature? First nature represents everything that exists and was not created or modified by humans. Whereas second nature specifically describes a design nature created in adjacency to existing urbanization, which is capable of absorbing future city growth into itself while maintaining the continuity of ecological systems, as described in an article by Adrian Hose and Masker Skonberg. So basically, in my perspective, in the planning process of today, we put the architectural concept high above the existing context in the planning hierarchy. And unfortunately, in many cases, the concept stamples over the context until there is nothing left of it at all. I suggest to reverse the hierarchy. However, not only to position the existing context above the concept, but also to create a second nature. In other words, to create the future context ahead of time. The trees we plant today will be the existing trees in a future plan. Every new plan or design we make will inevitably be about the future, because we plan, build, and design for the future. The problem in planning the future is that we cannot predict what it holds. But in my perspective, in planning, there are only two indisputable generators that we can predict. The first is walkability, the human movement. We will continue walking and using our legs unless we will become bionic and start flying everywhere instead. The second predictable generator is the dimension of time. We know that time does not stand still, so if we plant a tree and place it in the right conditions, over time it will certainly grow. Time is the keyword here. The planning and construction process in Israel is long and complicated. As demonstrated in an article from an Israeli economical newspaper, Kalkalist, the average time to complete a new neighborhood in the country is almost 16 years, from the moment of locating the territory to the moment of populating it. Many will look at this situation as a problem, but I choose to look at it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to use the dimension of time for our benefit. As landscape architects, we have the privilege to use the dimension of time like no other profession ever does. Trees and vegetation that play a major part in our designs require time in order to give us the desired effects. Trees have a huge contribution to the urban environment. The bigger the trees grow over time, so does the positive effects on our lives grow even more. In the urban planning timeline, there are three main points. The first and most important point is now, the present. The second point is the beginning of the planning process, which ends in the last point, the population of the new city. The time between the present until the beginning of the planning process is variable, whereas the time between the start of the planning process until the population is approximately 16 years, as mentioned earlier. I suggest taking advantage of this long timeline in order to allow trees to grow. My proposal has two products according to this timeline. 1. A set of tools that helps decide where and how to plant the second nature, now, in the present. 2. A tool that will help the future urban planner to make choices according to the future context that was implemented in the first stage. This product will be handy in the planning process stage in the future. Now we focus on the first product, the set of tools for planting the second nature. Since we speak about creating a system in the present, but for the future, there is a whole world of uncertainty about it. Very quickly, I realized that if I create a rigid network, it will hardly allow any flexibility and creativity for the future neighborhood. Therefore, I choose to focus on the intersections. I want to create a network of intersections, of which the path between them can vary. The method for creating this network rely on the combination of two things. 1. The human movement, and 2. The natural assets of the place. I use Grasshopper, a parametric design program, in order to create a system that combines these two. Together, it creates a network of green areas, existing and new, suitable for the human nature. Every place has different environment, therefore different places would lead to different results. But the common denominator between them will always be the layout of a green context within a 5 minutes walking distance. Let's see this idea implemented on the timeline. First, in the present, we plant a second nature according to the existing context and the walking distance parameters. Then, sometime in the future, these two green entities will become one green context. That green context is what the future urban planner would rely on, since it is suitable for the human nature of walking. With the help of the second product, the tool for making urban choices in a green context, the urban planner will use the green infrastructure for the future city. By the time it will be populated, the residents would be able to enjoy the benefits of the trees. The green infrastructure will be managed as an urban forest system. In the beginning, the second nature will be planted in a relatively high density. Then, over the years, there will be a removal and thinning of some trees according to the needs in the area. And when the time comes, also by the development of the future city plan. The removed trees can be transplanted or be used for productive purposes. At the end of the process, the green infrastructure would have a significant presence in the new neighborhood. This system will create areas suitable for absorbing the future urban growth into them, while considering walkability and the green context as the main planning generators. By that, we can assure a different starting point for each place that will enable future neighborhoods to have their own unique character. Furthermore, if the same city will keep growing inwards first, a process I personally support, before it starts to sprawl, the potential of the time interval is even bigger, because by the time the city will have to grow outwards, the green infrastructure will not only have 16 years to grow, it will potentially have much more. Let's take a closer look of how the method works exactly. On the chosen area, we need to recognize the existing natural assets, similar to Mikarg's design with nature. The area's existing vegetation, flow channels, places with high flood risks, slopes, etc. Then, I divide these elements into layers by points, lines, and polygons. After that, I'm using a parametric code to offset each element by a 5-minute walk parameter in order to map the areas that don't have a green context within a 5 minutes walking distance. These are necessary for completing the green network and constructing a complete picture of where to place the second nature. This action will complete the green infrastructure into a whole network. The second nature layout will be accompanied by a planting guideline system. The idea is that each layer will have different guidelines that tells the landscape architect how to plant the trees in the area, but at the same time will allow flexibility in decision making. The combination of the second nature layout and the spatial planting guidelines creates the planting plan, which is the method's first product. For the method's second product, the tool that helps the future urban planner, I'll reuse the same code that takes the existing natural assets in the area and add the 5 minutes walk parameter into it in order to create a map that shows the overlaps between the results. This map basically shows which areas have the highest hierarchy. Many overlaps means better connectivity to a variety of natural values within the green infrastructure. The future urban planners would be able to use this hierarchy map in order to make decisions in this context. For example, in an area with proximity to high number of natural values, it will make sense if it would become a place for a variety of uses or a very central urban place. I will now demonstrate how the system works on the city of Hedera that is located in the northern Sharon. Hadera is surrounded by many agricultural lands that in the future will gradually become new neighborhoods, as we can see in the city's master plan. The chosen area is an agricultural land designated for urban development. This is how the parametric system I created works. In this demonstration, we can see the area with the CAD survey, and the division into layers by points, lines, and polygons. After that, we see how the code offsets the layers in order to find the areas that do not consist the green context within a 5 minutes walking distance. And in the end, we can see the map that shows which areas have the highest hierarchy. Many overlaps means better connectivity to a variety of natural values within the green infrastructure.
The beauty of the system I offer
Is that it can be done on any other relevant area in the country and even in the world. The only thing that needs to be done is to identify the area's natural assets, each territory and its relevant resources, dividing them by different layers and then using the parametric code, like these examples of Harish and Rehovot. The idea of planting trees ahead of time in urban areas isn't new, and it was done before many times from different reasons and agendas. In this example, we can see the neighborhood of Achuza in Haifa. It is clear that the neighborhood is very young, but is already much greener than its surrounding area. The trees that had been planted back then contribute to the atmosphere and sense of place of this neighborhood to this day. If we could do it back then, almost 100 years ago, there is no reason whatsoever for us not to be able to do it, especially with the advancement of technology and our abilities today. Going back to Hedera, we can see the potential of this idea. Here we can see a place near the city, and this is what's going to happen in the future according to the current promoted plan.
So how will the area look like according to the system I proposed? In the early years, it will look almost the same. But over time, the trees will grow, providing more and more benefits and possibilities for its surrounding. In fact, we don't really know which plan will be there in the future, or how it will look like. But we do know that the city's residents will enjoy the benefits of the trees we plant now. The beauty of this idea is that even if the plan will be cancelled and eventually this area will stay as it is, the green infrastructure will surely be there, alive and well, creating a new landscape picture which will provide better quality of life and different possibilities for the residents of the nearby urban area. Looking to the future, we need to ask ourselves, what do we do today? So let's plant our future. Thank you.